the pressure and expectation on you is a lot higher because
You have been to 2 Olympic Games, hopefully on your way to the 3rd one. How much do you want it this time?
I really just try to take every day, every moment as a blessing and enjoy every aspect of it as I can because,
What do you think you're gonna miss the most the day you quit?
I think I'm going to miss
Welcome back to the Canadian Dream Podcast. Today, I'm going to tell you we have a special guest, and I mean it. It's a very special guest. For the first time, we have an Olympic athlete here on our podcast in our studio in Vancouver, British Columbia. I'm here with Shallon Olsen. Hi, Shallon.
Hi, how are you?
Great. Thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you for having me.
We have a lot of people here at the studio. We all came here to know a little bit more about you, what goes behind the scenes. You have achieved so much in sports. Gymnastics has been maybe the biggest part of your life so far. And how old are you?
I'm 23 years old.
There's a lot of things I want to ask you, but I think we should start with your biggest accomplishments. Before coming here today, I was reading a lot about you. I was not stalking, okay? So on Wikipedia, we have here that you are the 2018 World Silver Medalist and 2018 Commonwealth Games Champion on vault. You were also the 2018 Commonwealth Games Floor Exercise Bronze Medalist and the 2019 Pan American Games Vault Bronze Medalist. The list goes on. You were also the youngest athlete of the Canadian team in the Olympics in 2016. In Rio,
Yeah.
Right? But you have been in the Olympics in 2020 again.
Mm-hmm.
What has been the biggest achievement in your career so far?
Obviously, the obvious is Olympics twice. I didn't even expect to go to the Olympics at a young age. So just to be able to achieve that lifelong goal of going to the Olympics is something that I dreamed about as a kid. As a 16-year-old, I was just happy and excited to be there. But heading into my second games in Tokyo, I had higher expectations of myself. And I obviously wanted to do better than I did the last time, which was obviously get an Olympic medal. And unfortunately, it didn't happen. But hopefully I have one more run in me to try that out at the Paris Games this upcoming summer. So I'm excited.
We're in the end of February. So when are the Olympics going to be?
This summer, I think it starts
August or July?
July.
In July?
Yeah.
And you are preparing for that?
Yes.
You're going to be there again?
Well, I haven't made the team yet, but once Canada selects the team, and it'll be official.
What are the odds?
I have a pretty good chance of making it. So we have our Olympic trials end of May, and the top 2 athletes will qualify to the Olympics. And then the other 3 will either be event specialists or all-arounders. It just depends on how the Canadian Olympic Committee wants to select their team.
Right. In 2018, it sounds like that was your year. Is that correct? Or
Yeah, honestly, I look back on it now and I think that was like the peak of my career. Obviously, at my first Olympic Games when I was 16, I thought that was my peak, but looking back on it as a whole, I think when I turned 18 and went to my second World Championships was really then when I started to go on the rise.
Yeah, I didn't continue the list, but you also won a gold medal or a silver medal in the World Championships.
I got a silver medal at the 2018 Worlds, and then I got a bronze in Liverpool in 2022. The 2018 World Championships was in Doha, Qatar, and I made the vault final, which is my best event. Obviously, I went in with the expectation that I was just going to do my vaults to the best of my ability and perform them the best that I could. So I had no expectations going in that I was going to medal at all. And so Simone Biles was competing at that competition, and she was also in the vault final. So having to compete against the best athletes in the world was pretty insane to me and surreal. So just being able to be a part of something so much bigger than yourself was truly an honor. But I really tried so hard to not focus on what's going on around me, because at the end of the day, I have to focus on my gymnastics and what I can do. So I just tried to enjoy the moment and really just have fun with it.
And you did have a lot of fun, didn't you?
Yes, it was fun.
How many categories are there, or specialties? How do you call them?
Events.
Events.
Yeah.
How many events are there in gymnastics?
There's 4.
4. Vault is one of them, obviously. And then you have?
Uneven bars, balance beam, and floor exercise.
The floor exercise is what many people watch on TV.
Yeah.
And it's like you go from one corner,
Yeah.
like diagonals, to, and then the last one is the biggest jump, right?
I think they're all hard regardless.
Oh, yeah.
But floor
For
is...
me, stretching my legs is hard.
Floor, I don't really think athletes construct their routines based off of which tumbling pass is the most difficult. I honestly just think the athlete does what they're capable of doing. So like for me, most of the time, my hardest passes would be either the first or the second pass. And then my easier one would be my last one.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh. Well, I always thought that the last one is the most challenging one.
No, that's when you're most tired, honestly. Like the endurance starts to get more difficult at the end and you're breathing more heavy. So that's what I'm training for in the gym every day, is to build my endurance and become stronger.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go back now, rewinding many years. When did you start practicing gymnastics? And what influenced you to start?
So I started when I was 3. I have an older brother, if you don't know. And so he had a birthday party at a gymnastics gym. And so I got invited to go to this birthday party with my brother. And I actually had so much fun. I loved it. And straight off the get-go, I told my parents, like, oh, this is so much fun. I want to do it again. And so then they looked into the club that my brother went to for his birthday party. And it was just like fate, honestly. From that moment on, they found out that the coaches were Russian, and that they were very skilled in what they do. So that like definitely was like a career starter for me when I went to my first, I think it was nationals in Kamloops. I was 11 years old. I was competing against girls who were 3 times my age. I had like no experience, and I went in with obviously no expectations to win the competition. But I think I remember like getting a bronze medal. It was like so long ago, I don't remember all the stats. But I was really surprised at my performance and how I did. And I just remember my mom being like, I'm so proud of you. Like, you did great. And just from that moment on, even though I didn't know it at the time, I think she saw potential in me that I didn't even see in myself. So that was definitely an eye-opener for me. Mm-hmm. And then when I started to get better, my Russian coaches told my mom, like, oh, she's actually really talented, but like, don't tell her that because we don't want her to get a big head. And so she never told me.
They kept it a secret from
Yeah.
Let's not tell her. It's one day she's going to find out.
Yeah, so for the longest time, she didn't tell me that I was super talented from a young age. And the coaches could tell that I was very gifted too as well. But they never wanted to tell me because they assumed that I would like get arrogant or like start to think I'm better than others. And that was never really the case. I just did gymnastics because I love it and it's a passion of mine. So I just kept doing it. And I remember watching the 2008 Beijing Olympic Games on TV, and I was watching Shawn Johnson and Nastia Liukin on the television, and I was telling my mom, like, oh, I want to do that. Like, I want to be those girls. I want to be like them. And then I just like kept training. And then lo and behold, I made my first Olympic Games in Rio when I was 16. And I just remember like screaming, crying that I made the team. And it was a really special moment.
I can't imagine when you're 15 to 16 contemplating going to the Olympics.
Yeah.
So your mom encouraged you more than your dad, but was he also backing you guys up?
Yeah, my dad was also like a big part of my life. He's supported me through everything, whether that be financial expenses, trips, traveling, to and from practice. When I wasn't able to drive, my family did play a big part in
And your family
my success.
Vancouver,
Yes.
right? Vancouver or near Vancouver. Where do you guys? Where did you grow up and where do you live?
I grew up in Vancouver.
In
Yeah.
Vancouver. And where do you live now?
I live out in Surrey.
Yeah. Okay. So basically Vancouver. Okay. I'm sure you have had so many challenges, like any high achievers
Yeah.
do. But what would you say were the main challenges that you had in your career?
Well, I actually did deal with a pretty big growth spurt when I was young. And I remember having to adjust a lot of my skills because I grew so much, especially it was difficult on uneven bars because I used to be really short, like shorter than I am now. I'm already pretty short, but I was really short when I was a kid. And
Is it better to be short in gymnastics?
it's actually more difficult when you're smaller just because it's more of a disadvantage in my opinion. As like when you're taller, it's easier to transition from bar to bar if we're talking about bars, but not to the point where it's like too tall because you can't be too short and then you can't be too tall. You kind of have to be like somewhere in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I am somewhere in the middle now. Before I was too short, but now I'm like a perfect size.
But that adjustment caused some friction.
Yeah. It definitely caused some, friction, as you said, just because it was a readjustment of all my skills that I had learned from a young age, and then having to go back to the basics and figure out what works for me, what doesn't work for me. And that was definitely a learning curve for sure.
And when did you realize that vault was your event? Is it something that you chose or
No.
something that maybe your coach or someone else said, you should go in that direction?
It wasn't really something that my coaches or I chose. It was just something that I was just naturally good at. And some people have their strengths and their weaknesses. Everybody has them. But so for me, vault was like my good event, and that was something that I'm good at. Whereas another person might be good at bars or beam. And bars is my struggle event. So I'm not as good on bars as I would like to be, but I'm improving and getting better every day.
Is it because it's too hard on your arms, upper body?
No, so just from like a young age, I didn't really learn super good technique on bars. And ever since I've moved gyms, my new coach has taught me a lot better technique on how to handle the event. I was mostly, as my coach describes it, fighting with the bar. So basically fighting for my life when I was a kid. And somehow I would make the routine and land it. But now she has taught me a better way of approaching the event instead of just fighting for my life on that apparatus.
Okay, so vault was your main event. Are you still sticking to it? Is it still your best event? Coaches, you just mentioned you switched gyms. You have, how many different coaches have you had in those 20 years?
Maybe like 10 or
Oh, wow.
10 or more. Like I've worked with different coaches, but if we're talking about me sticking with specific coaches, I would say maybe like 2 to 4 max.
And what makes a coach really good, and what are the challenges working with the coaches that are not the perfect fit for you?
I would say the challenges are just, making sure that you're on the right page with your coach, having open communication. Obviously, it's a learning curve getting to know a new coach, especially if they haven't been your coach for most of your career. So I think that's a challenge in itself. And then also them just learning what type of athlete you are. So for me, when I switched gyms to my now coach, Dorina, the learning curve was her figuring out the type of athlete that I was, because I was so different from a lot of other gymnasts that she had coached in the past. So the one thing that we talk about a lot is trust in gymnastics, at least with me and my coach. She's come to a point in her coaching career where she trusts me and my gymnastics, and if I tell her I can do something, she'll 100% believe me, and she won't doubt for a second that I don't trust myself. Because if I tell her that I trust myself and my gymnastics, she 100% trusts in me.
Are there many Russian coaches in this field?
Yeah, so there were a lot of Russian coaches growing up. Unfortunately, a lot of Russian coaches did get pulled from the gymnastics scene due to safe sport allegations, because a lot of sexual abuse and mental abuse have been going on in the sport from a very young age.
Mm-hmm.
And so some of them have faced their consequences, some of them haven't.
Mm-hmm.
But the coaches that I had before in the past, I don't have them as coaches anymore, which is a little bit controversial in itself. But I'm happier now that I'm in a better headspace mentally and physically with the new coach that I have.
So your new coach is a woman?
Yeah.
Is it easier or more comfortable to have a female coach instead of a male coach?
Well, I had a female coach before. So my Russian coaches were husband and wife.
Which is also very common, isn't it? Husband and wife.
So
What?
kind of.
Few times.
Yeah, so my Russian coaches were husband and wife. So I do have experience, being coached by a female. Being coached by a male is a little bit different because they are more familiar sometimes with the men's side of gymnastics, but sometimes they're able to learn both sides of the sport, where they'll understand women's as well as men's. So I also have a male coach at my gym as well, and he understands both parts of gymnastics, male and female. So he's very helpful in that aspect too, because he knows what he's talking about.
Of course.
Yeah.
So something is going well. So tell me, what is your training routine?
I pretty much have a same morning routine every day. Wake up, shower, eat breakfast, have my coffee, check up on social media what's happening, and then I'll prepare my gym bag and head over to practice, which usually lasts for about, depending on how fast I go, 3 to 5 hours. And I'll, depending on the day, sometimes have a heavier load of training, and then some days I'll have more lighter practices. But since I'm in competition season, I am doing more heavier loads, so more routines, more numbers, just because I need to be prepared for when the competition comes, that I'm ready.
And when is the peak season of the year? Is it the summer always?
For me right now, I just had a competition this past week in Langley, BC.
How did it go?
Not too bad. It was a little shaky at first, definitely a little nervous. First meet of the season, and it was my first time doing all around since Tokyo, so that was a big achievement in itself. I got gold on vault. So as you were saying, vault is one of my best events, and so that title for me, no one has really come close to taking it because I'm so consistent in my performances.
And are the bars still your main
struggle
challenge?
Event? Yeah.
Is it? How did you perform in that event last weekend?
Okay, so I have a upgraded bar routine, and I have all the skills down, but gymnastics is not just about having difficulty, but having clean execution as well, and how well and pretty you can perform it. So unfortunately, I fell on bars both days, but it's okay. It was first experience for me competing a new bar routine, and it's a good learning curve for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Back to the challenges. One of my favorite subjects is always how many challenges we face and how we overcome them. Tell me about envy and jealousy. Is it a common theme in the sports?
So when I was younger, there was a lot of girls who were secretly jealous of me. Obviously, they would never say it to my face, but my mom was definitely a big support system of, protecting me from getting bullied and standing up to my bullies. I had a little bit of difficulty standing up to people who would step all over me as a kid. And so I think now as I've grown older, I know how to stand my ground and fight my own battles for sure. Because when I was younger, I didn't really understand when people were taking advantage of me in that sense. So I've definitely been able to find a way where I know when to put a stop to things and how to stand up for myself.
Mm-hmm. So what's your opinion on what happened to your fellow Olympian Simone in the Olympics?
Yeah.
What happened?
I don't necessarily think it was anything major that happened to her. She was just having a little bit of a struggle moment in competing. So we have this thing as gymnasts, which is called the twisties. So if you're doing a skill and it's similar as like getting lost in the air and not knowing where you are when you hit the ground, because gymnastics is all pretty much basically about air awareness. And
balance, right?
Yeah. And if you lose your sense of awareness for, it could even be like less than 2 seconds, you could get seriously very badly injured. And so that's what Simone was struggling with when she was competing. She basically lost her sense of awareness in the air. And so when she hit the ground, it was very dangerous for her.
Is it a concussion?
No.
No?
No.
What do you think might have caused that?
Sometimes I've had it before too. And I'm not necessarily sure what causes it, but I know that when I do go through it, I try to go back to the basics of learning the skill, because in my head, I'm thinking about just doing the skill as a whole. But if you break it down into sections, you don't panic as much. And I think that's what happened with Simone, is she panicked a little bit because she knew that she was having a little bit of difficulty with her skill. And so when you panic like that, it can cause unnecessary stress. And then just getting lost in the air is also a very scary feeling. So that when that happens, you just need to go back to the gym and practice the small steps.
You can get seriously hurt.
Yeah, it's very dangerous.
Have you got hurt before? Like seriously?
Not from the twisties. I've come pretty close to, like getting hurt from the twisties, but I'm always a cat in gymnastics. Everyone says, "Oh, you're a cat, Shallon. You always land on your feet." So I've saved myself a couple times from hurting myself badly in that aspect, but I have had a couple injuries in the past. When I was younger, I pulled the bar and I hit the bar with the back of my head, and I had a big gash, and so I had to get stitches. And luckily it's gone now, but this happened when I was like 11 years old. Haven't done it since, so we're good. And then I also broke my toe on the bar from hitting it on a skill.
Ooh.
So again, the sport definitely doesn't come with no injuries. I mean, all sports do. But you just have to be smart with your training, and what you do for recovery, rest is also very important and plays a role in how you compete.
Whenever I watch someone competing, especially on the floor, I go, oh, the ankles, the heels, the knees, or sometimes the shoulders. What injuries do people get the most from the sport?
From gymnastics, I would definitely say Achilles tears are very common in our sport because we're doing a lot of pounding on the ground, and that requires a lot of strong ankle mobility, and some people don't have strong ankle mobility, so that's a pretty common injury as well. There's a lot of girls who have bad back problems just because we're doing so much bending in the sport. And balance beam, I know for me, like hurts my back quite a lot because it's a lot of like back bridging, and it's like it just causes me pain. But yeah, and I also have like knee problems too. So definitely that's all from just the hard landings and overuse of gymnastics over time.
Yeah.
So those are some of the main ones for sure.
How much longer do you think you're going to be competing?
I actually want to retire after Paris, I'm not going to lie. I could do another cycle, but again, if I were to do another cycle, I'd just have to be really smart with my trainings and how I approach the next 4 years, because if I'm going to do another cycle, that's a whole nother quad. And 4 years of gymnastics on your body is a lot. So,
yeah. What other challenges do you face during training and heading to competition, and maybe even during or after a competition?
I think heading to competition, definitely nerves for sure is a big one. You know, what I try to do to calm my nerves is to do visualization in my head, just visualize my routines. I have been to like a lot of sports psych seminars in the past, but mostly I just try to visualize my routines in my head, and I think that helps me with my nerves at least. And I just try to tell myself positive affirmations so I don't panic and freak out too much about, you know, the gymnastics, because the outcome is going to be how well you perform it, obviously. And sometimes you don't have control over the outcome because it's really not in your hands. Gymnastics is judged by judges. So no matter how well you perform it, you might think you did the best routine in the world, but the judges could think otherwise. So it's just a matter of how well you can perform the routine to the best of your ability, and then the outcome is mostly out of your hands.
Have you been disappointed once or twice?
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I sometimes would think I deserved a specific score, and the judges completely thought otherwise. So you can dispute a score if you don't like the outcome of what it was. But the chances of them changing it, they would usually have to go back and rewatch the routine on film, and then they would make their decision from there if that is a good choice to change the score or not.
What goes in your mind before a competition?
Moments before. Okay, well, I guess we can throw it back to this past weekend because I just competed this past week. I would say definitely, so my competition was on Tuesday this past week, and I was pretty calm because the first day on Sunday was the first day of competition. I was recovering from being a little bit sick, so I had a little bit of like a runny nose, couldn't hear out of one ear. Ooh. The warm-up was going really, really fast, and I didn't even have time to like catch my breath, and we were already heading to the next event. So I was feeling a little bit panicked in that sense because everything was going so quickly and I didn't have time to, you know, compose myself. I would have loved if I had had 2 extra seconds to breathe, but unfortunately the general warm-up goes so quickly that no one's going to sit there and wait for me. So I have to keep up with the pace of the warm-up and how fast the other athletes are going. Hoping when I compete internationally this year, it'll be a little bit more smooth and more calm. But again, gymnastics is a high-stress sport in a high-stress environment. So the chances of that happening are probably very slim, but I'm going to do my very best to keep my composure, as I said, and try to stay calm and neutral throughout the whole thing.
I remember when I competed as a runner, I was so anxious before the competition that by the time I was there at the start line, I was already so tired. I felt many times exhausted before the race started. Do you feel that exhaustion sometimes as well?
Oh, 100%.
Like
I think,
I can barely stand on my feet, and I have to know do all this and jump.
yeah, so on Sunday, I definitely felt exhausted by the time I put my hand up to present to the judges. I was very tired because the general warm-up lasts for like about an hour, and then after you're done warming up all 4 events, you go back and you do it again. So you basically compete twice without actually showing your routines the first time around. But the second time where you do all 4 events again, you only have a 30-second touch on the equipment because that's what the general warm-up was used for. So you warm up most of your skills in the general warm-up, and then when you go to your first event, you get only 30-second touch on the equipment because you used up all of your time warming up beforehand.
Oh, wow. Another thing is sometimes so imagine you go to the track, all the runners, you come over here, you wait here. There's this race before you. You're going to be waiting here, say, for 15 minutes. And then next you go, blah, 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 blah. Sometimes I had to pee. Oh, my goodness. Right? What do you do when it's your turn and go? Does that happen to you as well?
If I have to go to the bathroom, most of the time I'll just go before my routine and before the 30-second touch. So going to the bathroom is pretty limited. So I tried it.
That sucks, doesn't it?
It does suck, but I try to do it beforehand so I know it won't be an issue. Just because if I really do have to go and it's an emergency, I can ask the judge that I need to take a bathroom break, and most of the time they're pretty good about it. So like, what are they gonna say? No, you can't go to the bathroom. Like, it's an emergency, let me go.
So this is one example. Are there any other challenges or concerns that you might be facing before the competition or during competition that most people have no idea about?
I don't really feel like there's a whole lot of concerns. Like I said, just keeping my schedule on a consistent pattern.
Yeah.
The only thing for me was just like the nerves, because sometimes I can get a little bit too much in my head about how I'm playing the routine out. Like, I go through different scenarios sometimes in my head about how the routine could go, but I most of the time try to look at it in a positive light, because if I start looking at it negatively, then obviously it's not going to go well. And I 100% believe, what you say to yourself will transform out on the competition floor. Yeah. So if I try to be positive and have a good mindset going in, then obviously in my eyes, I'm unstoppable.
No, I'm so excited. You mentioned mindset. It's a word that I love. Before we dive into the mindset topic, motivation. How do you find motivation after you have peaked or after the most important competition of the year, when you go, okay, so now here we go, 8 more months or 9 more months?
I think for me, especially knowing that retirement is on the rise for me, I really just try to take every moment as a blessing. I don't look at it as a chore, because I know it's something that I love to do, and I get to do this sport. I don't have to do it. So the fact that I get to go in the gym every day and do something that I love and I'm super passionate about, I think like that's a blessing in itself, that I get to do it. I don't have to do it.
So what is important on an athlete's mindset?
Having a strong mindset is important to me, because if you don't have a strong mindset mentally, it's going to be really hard to do the routine when you're competing. Over the years, I've learned that less is more for me. And so the less numbers I do, the more beneficial it is to me in my gymnastics. As a kid growing up, it was encouraged that we would do lots of numbers and lots of repetition to perfect the skill. But I've become really good with my muscle memory that I don't need to do as many reps as I did when I was younger. So that has definitely played a role in my gymnastics and how I execute and perform.
Have you learned anything specific about mindset from coaches that you take to heart?
Honestly, it hasn't really been my coaches who have taught me about mindset. I've had a bunch of different people come in and talk about mindset with me and some of my other teammates. And I think the one thing for me with mindset is, visualization is a big one for me. And that's kind of how mindset plays a role into my gymnastics career, is if I can visually see myself in my head doing the skills, then I know I can translate that out onto the competition floor. I did this when I was 16 and I still do it now. And I just think it's very beneficial for me in my gymnastics. So yeah.
And the rivalry. So I guess mindset is also important when it comes to when things become more personal, right? Oh, Vanessa is really like, oh, Natasha is going to be there again. Have you had any big rivals in your career?
I would say 100% Rebecca Andrade is my vault competition.
Oh, Rebecca?
Yeah, she's going for the gold. So I would say her vaults are very impressive. One of my biggest competitors, but she's also my friend. So you kind of have to put the aspect of that aside when it's competing.
So are you able to become friends with these girls during the international competition?
Yeah.
Do you actually approach each other? Hey, good to see you.
So,
Let's take a selfie.
So most of the time we meet through competitions.
Yeah.
So that's how we become at least acquaintances with the athletes, because we're all doing the same sport. We're competing for the same thing. We're trying to get a common goal.
Yeah.
So I think that's how we become friends on the competition floor. And just from, seeing each other at international meets a lot, you start to get to know the person and who they are and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. So no jealousy there? No.
No, honestly, I have so much respect for all of the athletes. They work so hard for where they're at in their lives, and they deserve everything that they've worked hard for.
Great. So now gymnastics is something that attracts a lot of young girls. How important, what are the benefits for young girls to get into this sport?
I think the benefits of young girls getting into gymnastics is it's a good way to channel your energy. And, from a young age, that's something that they can learn to fall in love with. At least that's what happened with me from a young age. I didn't even know I liked it until I went to my brother's birthday party. So it's just a matter of, inspiring the younger generation for me, because you want those little girls to look up to you. And at least when I was younger, I was one of those little girls looking up to the big girls on the television and saying, I want to be like that girl. So I think just setting a good example to the younger generation and really showing how amazing this sport is, because not only is it amazing, but it's also super fun as well.
What about the discipline aspect of it? Or working towards goals? Or exploring your body and discovering new skills?
I think that's probably the thrill of gymnastics is, discovering new skills, learning new skills. I think that's why so many young girls are attracted to the sport at a young age, because they want to learn how to flip. It looks fun. It's a good way, like I said, to channel their energy in a positive environment. And by doing that, it inspires them and their friends. And, there's younger girls at my gym that see me train every day, and they're definitely inspired by what I can do. So just them watching me and learning from me and growing from me, it's something that they can strive to achieve in their career, and definitely be like, oh, I want to be like her one day. So I just think it's a really, really good way to get these young girls excited for the sport and hopefully be in my position one day.
What is the main lesson you learned from from your 20-year career in gymnastics?
I think the biggest thing for me is to not be so hard on myself because, like I said, this sport is very difficult and very draining on the body. So I really just try to take every day, every moment as a blessing and enjoy every aspect of it as I can because I'm not going to be able to do this sport forever. So I just want to take it one day at a time and really just enjoy the last few months of gymnastics that I have left.
What do you think you're going to miss the most the day you quit?
Oh, I think I'm going to miss competing. Competing was my absolute favorite thing to do. I'm a performer. I love performing in front of a crowd. I feel like I was naturally born to perform. So I think that's something I'm going to miss. And at least right now, I'm learning that I'm discovering the love for gymnastics again, too, because ever since I started getting a little bit better at bars, it's been more fun for me. Like, I'm more excited to go into the gym and train that event because I'm excited to do it because it's like that sensation of flying through the air and defying gravity. So I think personally now, as I get older, it's more thrilling for me.
And the day you quit, what are you not going to miss at all?
I definitely won't miss the early morning practices, that's for sure. I don't do too well with morning practices. I'm more of a late riser. I like to train in the afternoons for sure, but I definitely won't miss the 6 a.m. strength trainings. When I was in college, we had to do that, and I hated it. I barely even woke up to my alarm, so.
Now, okay, let's put gymnastics a little bit aside. You just graduated?
Yeah, I graduated last year.
What did you go to school for?
So I got my undergrad in communications, and then I got my master's in sports management.
And what are your plans for the future? Can you disclose
Such a broad question. Honestly, I feel like everybody has a specific plan as to what they want to do once they're, done with their gymnastics careers. But honestly, I've thought of a couple different options that I could go try, potentially doing broadcasting. I have my aunt, she's a news anchor for Calgary, and she is really good at what she does. So that could definitely be an option for me, as well as working for the Canadian Olympic Committee, which I think would also be very beneficial in my path of gymnastics as well.
Oh, indeed. You're a very good communicator. Has anybody invited you to comment sports?
Not recently, because I'm still training for the Olympics and competing. But hopefully once I let people know that I'm interested in that path, I will be able to get a couple connections going and hopefully start my work-life career.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Yeah.
It's always good to have someone knowledgeable who not only knows about the sport, but who has been there. You have been to 2 Olympic Games, hopefully on your way to the 3rd one. How much do you want it this time?
I think I'm mostly just frustrated with how Tokyo played out because I went in with really, really big expectations to medal on vault, which was my best event, and I didn't do that for the 2nd quad in a row. So for the 3rd quad, obviously, I have to bring it and give it everything I got because I know I'm not going to have another opportunity like this. And like if I retire, I definitely won't have it again. So it's definitely a little bit more stressful heading into an Olympic year, which is this year. But I'm just going to try to enjoy it as much as I can too, because I know the journey is coming to an end. So I'm really just trying to enjoy every moment, like I said. I mean, they never said it was going to be easy. So that's one thing for sure, is that it's very competitive, and you know you're going up against the best. So you got to give it your all.
You have to sacrifice a lot to be a top performer. Tell me a few things that you had to forego in the past, say, 5-10 years in your life that maybe let's say, normal girls can do and you couldn't because you were training and competing?
Yeah, so like especially in high school, I definitely missed out on a lot of, get-togethers, parties, having like a more social life because all of my time would go to training. I would train when I was in high school, like 25 to 30 hours a week. And I would go to school half days because my training schedule was so hectic. I almost barely didn't graduate too because I was worried I wasn't going to have enough credits. But luckily, the teachers at my school were very accommodating and helped me get all the assignments in that I missed. So I think just having a really strong support system helped me in that aspect, as well as my family, for sure.
And being a gymnast, it's a very pleasant competition to watch. People look great, have amazing bodies. And do you get a lot of attention?
I've kind of hit the point of like, I'm famous, but I'm not like too famous to the point where I can't go anywhere out in public and I'm going to have to like cover my face and stuff like that. So I still have a decent amount of privacy, which is nice. But there are some celebrities who have paparazzi following them all the time, and that seems like no privacy at all to me. So I'm happy that I can go places and I won't be mobbed by fans just like asking for a picture from me.
Or stalkers.
Yeah.
Do you have stalkers? Have you had?
Not like full-on stalkers, but I've had some creepy people try to message me before. So I have to just, know.
You on their podcast.
That's just one.
First time.
Just first time, but yeah. Just being cautious of, who's messaging me. And most of the time I can tell. So this one looks safe to me, so we're good.
So it's good that now, because you have been able to keep it to yourself, now you are able to, whenever this is over, this chapter of your life is over, you are able to have an entirely new life.
Yeah.
Right? Without all the paparazzi, like you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
We know other athletes, they can never have a private life again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Depending on who you are. So like Simone Biles is a well-known athlete around the world. So pretty much I would assume everywhere she goes, she probably gets mobbed.
Yeah. It's funny how there's pros and cons for everything.
Yeah.
It's way easier to be the underdog too, isn't it? Than to be the reigning champion and then go back to the same competition next year.
I think when you're somebody like Simone, the pressure and expectation on you is a lot higher because people are expecting you to win. And so she has that added pressure from the public to do good. And obviously she's going to put pressure on herself because she's a perfectionist and she wants to do great. But when you have other people watching in from the outside on your gymnastics, that also puts an added stress on the gymnast, whether like people know it or not.
Yeah, a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
Your Canadian dream, have you achieved your goals? Do you have any dreams that you're gonna start working on now?
I would say obviously I want to get an Olympic medal. That's been my goal ever since I made the Olympics. I was hoping that would happen in Tokyo, but unfortunately I didn't perform my vaults to the best of my ability, and I knew as soon as I finished the routine that it was not a routine that I was necessarily proud of. So I know going into Paris, I'm gonna do my best to execute my routines as best as I can and perform them to the best of my abilities. So that's really all I can ask for in this sport. Obviously there's gonna be errors here and there, but it's a matter of how you deal with them and how you work with them to be able to overcome, the outcome.
This has been very insightful. Before I let you go, I want to ask you a question that is more for our audience. You mentioned that you are a role model for the young girls out there who are starting to practice gymnastics, but also for anybody who is into sports or who just looks at someone good looking and who has achieved so much and go, wow, I want to be like this person. What pieces of advice would you give to the young girls in Canada or around the world who are watching you or who have been following you?
I would say to any young girl that is, interested or wanting to get into gymnastics, just to enjoy the process. And if you have a goal, then, keep reaching for the stars. You never know what you could land upon. So I just think if you're determined and you really want something, then anything that you set your mind to, you can achieve.
And now something for your fans. Gonna be rooting for you to make it to the Olympics. What would you like to say to them?
See you in Paris.
Great. Thank you so much, Shallon. It has been such a pleasure. And thank you for watching this episode on YouTube or for listening to it on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. If you are on YouTube, remember to share, to like, and to subscribe to our channel. Okay? I'll see you on the next episode. Bye.